Hey y'all, hey, so I'm back with another video, and this one it's not me making anything in particular. I just wanted to show you guys some tips and things about your soap batter. In this particular video, I'll be talking about hot process soap, why it turns chunky and thick pretty fast, and let you know it's just not usually random. So it's almost usually always a chain reaction, something that you can trace back to. So in this video, I'm going to show you one common cause, why it happens or when it happens, and the different signs you can watch for, um, so you can keep your batter more pourable. Okay. Um, so one common cause straight out the gate is overheating during the early portion part of the cook. Okay, that's one of the most common reasons that hot process soap gets thick and it's hard to pour due to overheating. And it usually happens for several reasons. The pot can run too hot too soon. Um, and it could be too much direct heat. And a lot of times that happens if you cook with your crock pot on, even if it's on low. So that can cause some issues. And also if you lose water too quickly. So again, this is something you need to consider when making your soap recipe, water loss or the amount of water in your soap recipe. And also you need to understand that hot process soap making is a controlled cook. Okay. And in this case, fluid hot process soap making is even more controlled because you have to really pay attention to your soap batter and what's going on with it, how it moves through stages, and at what pace you can manage each stage. And once you've done this a time or two, you can handle even when it seems to be aggressive, when it calms down, when it jumps from here to there, when you start learning what it looks like and what you can do, when it's time to add the fragrance, when it's time to pour, if you should stir it, if you should cover it, all these things. And believe it or not, these things also affect why, how, when, if the batter can overheat and get chunky. Okay, and let's just think about what this batter looks like. So if you look at the video, you'll see different phases of this particular batter, going through some phases. Okay. Um, so what actually happens in the pot? So when your soap batter gets too hot too fast, the soap can start to thicken quickly because saponification has speeded up. Now it's already being speeded up because it is hot process. So when it overheats too quickly, it speeds it up even more. So at the same time that that's happening, you got to consider that there's water steaming off or flashing off of the batter, or the pot could be venting. Please take notice of the outside edges, which you'll see in this particular video. You'll see at different parts that there's crust, edges of the soap or soap batter. And this is another thing that happens when the soap starts to thicken because it's cooking unevenly at this point. Okay, and so that's an indicator too that the bottom may be hotter than the center or what have you. So that means it could be hot spots, and so therefore you could have lumps and things of that nature already forming. So you end up with a pie of soap that looks like chunks and pudding or pudding, mashed potatoes. And you can go through a mashed potato stage, but your soap for fluid hot process soap making, you should push through the mashed potato stage, like not stop, at the mashed potato stage. And then sudden because after that, if you don't know how or be able to push that through that stage, then we know what's happening next. You're plopping. Okay. So again, this is a result of a heating management issue. Okay. And so I'm going to tell you about what stage it usually happens in and why it matters. Now, the overheating issue um, usually happens right up after you hit trace. So think about, you got emulsion, then you got trace. Okay, so as the batter transitions into the early cook, then this is where you see the speed up happening. And so then you're dealing with a timing issue. Okay, because we know that at emulsion you get to the light trace, then that's when things are calm for a little bit, and then you may be thinking, okay, we good, it's smooth, it's going through, but then all of a sudden you'll notice a kick in your stick blender going, and then it can speed through, and then everything just starts kicking in. So you want to be careful about that. So the heat speeds up, and so now what you're dealing with is a short uh, calm period, and this also is contingent too. Now there's a lot of other factors, but we just now talking about overheating. Okay, y'all. Um, So this is the point for where it goes from like smooth to stirrable to like chunky and then to like stiff. And it can happen in a flash, in a minute or two, and then you're like, what happened? It was just good, right? So you know, and then that's the stage where a lot of soap makers, um, unfortunately make it worse without realizing it, because what happens? You take the lid off, repeatedly checking the progress, right? You're stirring constantly, which in turn exposes it to the area surface. And then if you're lifting off the lid, moisture is escaping. Um, you're letting the batter sit against a very hot bottom. So that means if you have it inside the crock container, or it's still cooking, right? Or you have the crock pot on. So you got to make sure that everything is cooking even. So you've had those points where you be like, oh, it was doing fine, and then all of a sudden it's not. So that means that it transitioned pretty quick on you. Okay, so I want you to start watching for early signs of overheating. Okay, and a couple of those signs or red flags are grainy and like a curled texture. Um, So that can be like tiny grains, or it could look like separating, or like the batter has broken. Now, I tend to look in my soap making. I look for that stage because that's an indicator for me about how I need to move my batter along. But I'm really experienced, so what I'm saying to you is, for you, you may need to temper back, right? You need to watch what's going on, but again, you need to think about your heat. All right, for you, this is what we're doing. I need to stay focused on what I'm telling y'all. So the overheating, okay, it could go to a overheating section real quick on the separation grainy looking section. Okay, also think about the thickening around the edges. Like I mentioned, like the dry pieces of soap, it get crispy and crunchy around the edges, and y'all know that I'm a stickler for that. I like to wipe around the edge container. Okay, so you put that back in and you fold it back in. So you want to be cognizant of that, because that also is an indicator that things may be unevenly heating. So you might be running, it may be running hot on the edges, on the bottom, or what have you, but you just need to pay attention. All right. Then you got patches that can turn into lumps. Okay. So you stirring it seem okay, but then you see thick chunks forming, and you can't fully stir it back in. All right. So this is another sign that the batter is overcooking. So, or there's another thing you want to look for. It goes from pudding to like dough. You know what I mean? So it's like smoother than thick than dough. Like, that blender gets stuck. You know what I'm saying? Um, so there is a normal thickening curve in hot process, but overheating, like, kind of, when it gets stuck, that's like over the cliff part. So it done went past what it needs to, and so then you've passed, or it appears that you may have gone past the pour. But there's tricks and tips and things like that that I've learned through all these years of making it, how to get through that. And most of the time you think you can't get past it, you won't throw it away or what have you, or you just plop it in because you feel like it won't move and it's done, but it's not. Okay. And another thing, excess steam, okay, or a dry, crispy, crunchy looking surface. All right, you want to pay attention to that, because that is another indicator of overheating. All right, another one I want to mention is, if at towards the end you know that your batter should be looking like glossy. Okay, glossy, not looking dry, not looking matte, looking glossy. Okay. Um, Also know that if you have less water, it means thicker soap. If you're losing water, thicker soap. All right. If you smell fragrance burning off early, okay, or if you feel like your pot is too active, let's say that, then you're probably running hotter than you think you are. All right. So before this video ends, let me give you a checklist, a couple of questions or something that you should probably ask yourself, and so that you can figure out what's going on. All right. Think about it. Was my heat on high? Or was my crock pot, or whatever it is you're using, is it known to cook uneven or run high? Did I keep the lid off a lot? Did I keep checking it? Did I just leave it off? Because y'all know in my videos, I usually keep a lid on, or I put the little plastic cap on top. It's important, y'all. is super, super important. Now, did the edges thicken before the center? So you want to pay attention to that. A lot of times I've seen the edges be boiling over and folding over into the center, okay? So you want to pay attention to that. So if you're nodding yes, I didn't experience this happens to me, then it's a strong possibility that overheating is a very strong issue for your process, okay? What you need to do in that moment, without me trying to turn this into a little hot process soap rescue video, you want to think about how the soap walks through its processes, right? I'm not gonna, teach you the different fixes, in this one particular video, but I want you to walk away with an understanding of the cause early. So if you're like in the middle of a batch and you see these signs or these flags that I've given you, okay, your general goal needs to be to slow the heat down and stop your water loss, okay? So that means you might want to turn it down, keep the lid on or whatever, keep it on. All right, instead of checking it all the time, keep the lid on more consistently. You want to let the battle set the soap batter settle, okay, instead of over stirring. That's a big one. People be just stirring that batter up, okay, and that's cooling it off too quick. Yeah, you need to let it sit. You want to watch your edges of the soap, how it folds, and you want to make sure that you're not running hot spots at the bottom of your container. All right. So it's important that your heat adjustments are noticed early, so you can fix it as it goes along um, into the soap cooking process, so that you can see the difference between a pour and a spoon and pack or plop situation. Okay, and it matters because you know we always say if it's messed up, we still can use the soap, right? We can still use the soap, but you don't want to, you want a better soap. So that being said, guys, all right. So that being said, with all of that, even though you still use your soap, you want to make sure that you're trying to improve where you can. All right, even though you can still pack it and plop it, you want to uh, just make sure that if you do it this way and start checking for your flags, you can make sure that your additives are evenly distributed. Then you don't have to worry about air pockets, and you don't have to pack or plop anymore. You don't have to worry. You have more design leeway too. So, and also think about your fragrance. When you add it at the wrong time, it can thicken your batch. It can even seize it. So it just gives you more leeway when you learn how to manage and recognize the overheating. It's not about perfection. It's about control. So you want to think about that. All right. So you get to, once you get it down pat, you'll get to decide whether your hot process is going to be rustic and texture or smooth and pourable. Y'all know me. Y'all know my channel. I'm a smooth and pourable fluid type chick, okay, on this channel. So anyway, this is something I've been seeing a lot with troubleshooting other batches for some batches for other soap makers, and I've been helping them with. So if it sounds like your batch of soap or something you need help with, I'm offering one-on-one troubleshooting sessions. And if you're interested in that, the booking link is in my description. So y'all, thank y'all for viewing my video, and I'll holler at y'all soon.